Welcome back to another edition of a New York State of Mind podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Ralph Miranda. My producer, Nathan Miranda, is with us today. On our most recent podcast, we talked Yankees, and we talked a lot of Yankees. And rest assured, we will be talking Yankees again before the summer of 2025 is over and probably into the fall of 2025. So let's talk a little bit about the New York Giants. Those of you from New York Giant fans, know very well the struggles of the New York Giants. They won the Super Bowl in 2007 with that remarkable run, capped off by an upset of the undefeated New England Patriots in the Super Bowl 42 in Glendale, Arizona. 2008, they didn't have a great year in 2008. They were I believe 8-8. 2008 was the year they came off that 2007 Super Bowl. Started the season 10-1, faltered down the stretch, but still had the number one seed, and then lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in their first round game, which was very deflating, considering that I think the Giants were probably the best team in the NFL that year. 2009, 8-8. 2010, 10-6, missed the playoffs. Barely that year. And then, of course, 2011, 9-7, and another great Super Bowl run, capped off by defeating the New England Patriots again. So those were the glory years with Eli Manning quarterback, Tom Coughlin the coach, great running game with Brandon Jacobs, Amon Bradshaw, tremendous offensive line. In fact, the Giants were the number one rushing team in the NFL in 2008. And then they got old. I mean, some of the players got old, obviously. 2012, they made a run, didn't make the playoffs. And then 2013, it all started to fall apart. Their records were pitiful in 13, 14, 15. They fired Tom Coughlin after 15, hired Ben McAdoo as the head coach. 16, they went to the playoffs with a bunch of new free agents, especially defensive free agents, lost in the first round of the Green Bay Packers. And then, of course, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, you name it, the Giants were pitiful. I mean, in fact, some of those years with Joe Judge as coach, it was not only pitiful, it was downright non-professional. Then in 2022, we had a new regime come in, right? Joe Schoen was hired as the general manager. Thank goodness they got rid of Dave Gettleman, who basically emasculated this team. Joe Schoen comes in as general manager. He brings in Brian Dable. Schoen came from Buffalo as their assistant general manager. Brings in Joe Schoen as the head coach, who was the offensive coordinator in Buffalo, who many considered the reason behind the success to Josh Allen. So obviously the thought was he could do the same thing in New York with Daniel Jones, who was the Giants' first-round draft pick in 2019. And yeah, the Giants had a great season. They came out of the gate 6-1, lost to Seattle before the break, 6-2, defeated the Texans coming back from their bye, 7-2, and then it was like hold on and try to keep things together till the end of the season. The Giants finished the season 2-5-1, but they made the playoffs with a resounding victory over the Colts, the second to last week of the season. Tremendous road win in the playoffs against the 3-seed Vikings in 2022, and then, of course, lost to the Eagles in the divisional round. But the excitement level for the Giants was high. I mean, you had a team that was in the playoffs. You had Saquon Barkley at running back. You had Daniel Jones, who looked like he was going to be the guy after that. Then 2023 comes around, and I know all you Giants, I hate to rekindle this because I know it tugs away at you just like it does me, but a lot of excitement going into the 2023 season. They open against the Cowboys on Sunday night at home. Their first drive, they move the ball down the field methodically, and you're thinking, hey, this is it. The Giants are the team. And then all of a sudden have an offsides penalty. They lose yardage on a run. They fumble a ball. It's picked up. They fumble a ball. They recover it. They've lost 12 yards on that play. It's fourth down. The field goal gets blocked. The Cowboys pick it up and run it in for a touchdown. And after that, the floodgates are open. The Giants lose that game 40-0. And then the rest of the season is kind of a blur, and the Giants finish 6-13. So then the boo birds come out. The skeptics come out. It fired Dable, get rid of Daniel Jones. Last year comes around. The Giants don't look any better. Possibly the worst thing that happened to the Giants was the offseason hard knocks, where you saw the botching of the Saquon Barkley deal. And the fact that the owner said, if he goes to that team in Philadelphia, I'm not going to be able to sleep at night. Of course, he went to Philadelphia. And, you could blame Joe Schoen for that. I kind of do blame Joe Schoen for that. But Saquon Barkley said he wanted to be a Giant for life, but he didn't come back and give the Giants a chance to match the Eagles' offer. So, doesn't matter. I mean, whoever you want to put the blame on, they lost Saquon Barkley. Daniel Jones doesn't look like the guy. Probably the downfall of Daniel Jones, there's a lot of them, but the London game they played against the Jaguars, I believe it was, the one play that I think defined his downfall was he had 3 receivers running routes. 2 of them were wide open. He didn't throw to either one. He checked it down or threw it to the sideline. It got tipped and out of bounds and incomplete, and that was the end of Daniel Jones. And I think the problem with him, Daniel Jones was probably the hardest worker on the team. He was smart. He was athletic. He had a good arm. But for some reason, he just couldn't make a quick enough read. He couldn't read the guy to go to quick enough. And then when he saw something, he was hesitant on whether or not to throw it. And I think that was the one little downfall of Daniel Jones. So the Giants win 3 games last year. They don't get the number 1 pick because, again, they beat the Colts late in the season. But anyway, so here we are. So on the offseason, rumors that Schoen and Dable are going to be fired. Tim Mara decides to keep the both of those guys. He keeps them, gives them another opportunity, and everybody starts looking to the draft. So the Giants have the 3rd pick in the draft. And everybody said you need a quarterback, and we know they needed a quarterback. But the Giants made some very key moves, in my opinion, in the offseason, free agent-wise, okay? And probably the biggest move, if you want to talk about a guy that can come in and probably help them immediately, is by getting Paulson Adebo, a cornerback from the New Orleans Saints in free agency. He's a very good cornerback. He's going to do a good job for the Giants at cornerback. He'll do a lot for the Giants, specifically giving a break to guys like Cordell Flatt and Deonte Banks at corner. He'll be a good 3rd corner, possibly could start and give those guys a little bit of a rotation. So I think that was a really good move. The other 2 good moves they signed Russell Wilson, free agent from the Steelers, and they signed Jameis Winston, a free agent from, I think he was with the Saints. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Nathan. I know he was with Tampa Bay, but I think he was with the Saints when the last team he played for before he became a free agent. But to me, those were the 3 moves that were the best. Now, they signed a bunch of other free agents. They signed a couple linebackers. They signed some other defensive backs. They signed some guys that are going to be good special teams players. But those 3 were the big moves. Adebo was a big move because it gives them another corner that's going to help them tremendously. They've got a really good young free safety in Tyler Nubin, who was a rookie last year. And they got another great nickelback in Andrew Phillips, who was a rookie last year. So I think the Giants' secondary is going to be much improved. The Giants' defensive line is going to be much improved. Part of the reason it's going to be much improved is because in round 3, they drafted Darius Alexander, a defensive tackle from Toledo. Not sure if he's going to be a great pass rusher, but he's proved in college that he's going to be a good run stopper. And what was the Giants' number 1 problem on defense last year? They couldn't stop the run, okay? And that's what Dable and Shane has said. They have got to be able to stop the run. In the NFL, if you're going to be a great defense, you've got to stop the run, and the Giants couldn't do that last year. So now they've got Darius Alexander to couple with Dexter Lawrence, and they've got some other guys in there as well. We saw a lot of these guys last year, defensive tackles, guys like Brian Burns, who can be an online player, but it's also an outside linebacker. Raheem Nunez-Roches, who they got as a free agent the year before from Tampa Bay. So I think the Giants' defensive line is going to be much improved. They're also going to have tremendous pass rushers. So everybody remembers back in the Super Bowl years, back in 07 and 11, the Giants had the NASCAR package when they wanted to get after the quarterback. Osi Umenyiora, Justin Tuck to combine with Michael Strahan and those guys. You could almost have like 4 or 5 defensive ends rushing the passer. And I think the Giants are going to kind of rekindle that this year. You've got guys like Brian Burns, who they got in a trade with Carolina last year. They drafted probably their number one pick, obviously, that everybody remembers. They drafted Abdul Carter from Penn State. Abdul Carter has played linebacker. He's also a good edge rusher, so he's going to help tremendously. And then they got Kayvon Thibodeau that they got in the first round a couple years ago. So those three guys right there are kind of the foundation of a new NASCAR package. And I think the Giants are going to have a really good pass rush this year, and I think they're going to be able to stop the run a little better. The thing that I wonder a little bit about is the linebackers. I mean, inside linebackers, you got Bobby Okereke, who is a really good linebacker. He led the team in tackles a couple years ago. Last year, he fell off a little bit. Micah McFadden, who's only played 2 years, but he's turned out to be a pretty good linebacker, but he's had little lapses in judgment and lapses in play. So I don't know what's going to happen there. They're going to have to really get those guys to step up, okay, and play good inside linebacker. Because when you've got good defensive tackles up front that can occupy blockers, then it's up to your linebackers to fill gaps and make tackles. So we'll see if those guys can do that. And Burns is also a guy that you can bring up to the line of scrimmage for your fourth kind of NASCAR rusher. So I think the Giants will be in good shape defensively this year. Let's go back to the offense. We talked a little bit about Abdul Carter, their number one draft pick. And then the Giants took their second round draft pick and traded it to the Houston Texans to move up to number 25 in the first round to get their quarterback of the future. And that was Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. I really like Jackson Dart. You know, the Giants took a lot of heat all offseason long. The talks were that they had to get a quarterback at number 3. Many people thought Cam Ward would go number 1 to the Titans, and he did. Then the question was, who were the Browns going to take? The Browns did not take a quarterback, so then everybody thought the Giants should take Shedeur Sanders. Well, we all know what happened with Shedeur Sanders. We're not going to get into that. But the Giants held firm. They took Abdul Carter, who was the best player in the draft, and then they traded up at number 25 to get their quarterback. Jackson Dart, in the offseason training activities, OTAs, and don't get me wrong, the OTAs is like playing 7-on-7 flag football, okay? But he has shown tremendous brilliance, not only in his grasping of the game plan, not only in his performance, but also something that I mentioned earlier that Daniel Jones didn't have, his ability to find a guy and cut it loose. I mean, I think in the NFL, you have to take shots down the field. And that's the one thing Daniel Jones didn't do enough, was take shots down the field when he saw a guy open. Because remember, in the NFL, a guy's open with a shorter window than you think in college or high school or anywhere lower than that. You got to throw the ball. You got to put it in there. That's what makes a great quarterback. Jackson Dart has shown his ability to do that. And then you throw in Russell Wilson, who'll probably be the starter. Russell Wilson still has some legs. He's not as athletic as Daniel Jones was, not even as athletic as Jackson Dart. But he still can run the football a little bit, and he has shown the propensity to not be afraid to throw the ball down the field. We've seen that in the OTAs. We saw that in Denver. We saw that in Seattle. We saw it in Pittsburgh last year. So I think Russell Wilson alone, okay, and I'm going to go out and make this statement, Russell Wilson alone will be a good enough quarterback to get the Giants 4 or 5 wins, okay, possibly 6 wins. And then I think your defense and maybe some of your other offensive players can get you a couple more. So I think a successful season for the Giants is going to be maybe 7 wins, okay? I think 7 wins would be great if they go 7 and 10. If they can get 8 wins, I think it's a tremendous season. But that's success for the Giants this year, and then you build on that, and then in 2026, hopefully you can make the playoffs again. Let's go over some of the other draft choices. After Darius Alexander in round 3, the Giants went for Cam Skattebo in round 4. Everybody remembers him, right? I mean, he played for Arizona State. Remember the college football playoff game against Texas? The kid, I mean, whether you like him or not, he's brash, he's cocky, but he is a bowling ball runner, and he does not give up. And I think he's going to be a nice addition to the Giants, especially kind of as a, you remember back in 2008, the Giants had thunder and lightning at running back with Brandon Jacobs and Ward and Ahmad Bradshaw. Now they've got Tyrone Tracy, who is will be their second-year running back. He was a rookie last year, had a tremendous rookie year, ran for 839 yards. And now you got a guy like Scadaboo who can come in and just pound it, especially if you're trying to run out the clock, trying to get short yardage plays. I think Scadaboo is going to be a great addition to the Giants, and I'm really happy that they drafted him. Then they went for Marcus Mabo, a guard from Purdue. They got in round 5. He's going to be a good pick. He's a pretty good player. He's going to fit in with the Giants, especially in the rotation on the offensive line. And, of course, round 7 and 4th, they got some guys that are, we'll find out. They're probably going to be special teams players. But the key for the Giants, obviously, is going to be what? It's going to be what it was the last few years. They got to be able to run the football. And to do that, you've got to have a functioning offensive line. And last year was better, but they had injuries and they couldn't perform after that. So, as I see it, your starting offensive line is going to be Andrew Thomas at left tackle, probably John Runyon at left guard, John Michael Schmitz at center, Jermaine Eluminor at right tackle, and then right guard, right now penciled in Greg Van Roten, but Mabo may make a push for that. And then also you got Evan Neal. So Evan Neal will be the wild card there. Evan Neal was a tackle. They drafted him as a tackle, but he didn't perform very well. In fact, he performed really pretty poorly. Basically whiffing on guys. I mean, he couldn't stop anybody from getting to the quarterback. But they're going to move him to guard. And I think that's going to be a better position. In fact, he was a guard when he got to Alabama, and they moved him to tackle. But I think guard is his natural position. So if he pans out at guard, the Giants could have a formidable offensive line. But again, they got to stay healthy. And that's where some of these backups that they drafted and that they also have already on the team will be a key for the Giants in being able to fill in if certain guys get hurt. And you're usually going to see injuries on the offensive line. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. So we've talked about their running game. We've talked about the quarterbacks. One thing I want to say about the quarterbacks, so I mentioned Russell Wilson. You got Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston right now is the perfect backup. He's accepted his role. He's positive. He's a great guy to have in the quarterback room. He builds his teammates up, and he's not afraid to be a backup. In fact, he relishes the opportunity. If Wilson goes down, Winston can step right in. His bugaboo the last few years has been throwing a lot of interceptions, but he also throws a lot of touchdown passes. So those two guys are going to give Jackson Dart a chance to sit on the bench, okay, and to learn. And I want to tell everybody out there who's listening, if you're a Giants fan, do not, and let me repeat, do not clamor for Jackson Dart to play if the Giants start out 1-4, okay, or 2-6, because that would be horrible. We know the Giants are not a great team yet. We know they're going to struggle, all right? They're going to be better this year. I believe they are. They could win 7 or 8 games. If Jackson Dart can sit most of the season and don't come in, say, until week 16 or 17, or even next year, you're going to have a much, much better quarterback, okay? Much, much better quarterback. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. Now, I'm not comparing him to Patrick Mahomes, but Alex Smith was the quarterback in Kansas City. He actually took the Chiefs to the playoffs. They drafted Mahomes. Mahomes sat for 16 weeks. Week 17, he goes in there and plays. The next season, they're off to the races. So I think that's what you got to do to build this quarterback up, okay? Let's talk about the receivers. Malik Neighbors, great rookie receiver. Malik Neighbors was a great draft pick for the Giants. 109 catches, 1,204 yards, 7 touchdowns last year. He's obviously going to be the same, especially with Russell Wilson throwing to him. Darius Slayton, guy that caught a lot of passes over the years. There was always banter about him every year. Should the Giants let him go? Should they trade him? Should they bring him back? Well, they brought him back. They signed him to a 3-year, $36 million contract. And just as a side note, that's kind of the money that it would have taken to bring Saquon Barkley back, was 3 years, $36 million. So that only added to the bad reputation that Joe Shane got, because most of the Giants fans were saying, well, you wouldn't give it to Saquon Barkley, but you're giving it to this receiver who's, an older guy. But that's beside the point. I have no problem with letting Saquon Barkley go, only because, running backs, their careers are the shortest out there. And don't get me wrong, Barkley had a great season with the Eagles. They won the Super Bowl. He was the Offensive Player of the Year. But a lot of that was he was on a much, much, much better team. And had he been with the Giants, he would not have been the Offensive Player of the Year. All right, so I digress. So Darius Slayton, you still got guys like Jalen Hyatt. He's going to be a good receiver. And then, of course, they got a bunch of other guys in there that can play wide receiver well. I mean, Bryce Ford Wheaton was a young guy that they brought in. Isaiah Hodgins, the guy that kind of stepped out in 2022 in the playoffs with Daniel Jones throwing to him, he's still there. So you've got a lot of guys still playing there, that at wide receiver that can give the Giants some really good depth. I really believe that. And we'll see. We'll see a lot of these guys. Wan'Dale Robinson's another name that stands out to me, who they drafted. Not real big, 5'8", 185 pounds, but has good hands and is a good possession receiver. So that's kind of a recap on the New York Giants, recap on their past, recap on what brought them to where they are right now, and a little bit of a recap on where they are going into the 2025 season. Now, the only little problem the Giants have, which, is not anything that they can control, okay, is the schedule. The Giants have probably the toughest schedule in the NFL, all right, without a doubt. They open the season on the road against the Redskins. Remember, I don't say Commanders; they're the Redskins. That's going to be, and I told our producer Nathan when we were talking about this. To me, that's going to be the key game for the Giants this year. And why do I say that? You play 17 games. Is if they go to Washington, and remember the Redskins are what? They're the toast of the town now, right? They've got a rookie quarterback, right? Jaden Daniels, right? Comes out, has a tremendous year. I mean, he didn't look like a rookie last year. The Redskins get to the NFC Championship game. They beat the Detroit Lions, the number 1 seed in Detroit. They get to the NFC Championship game against the Eagles and pretty much were in that game till the end. So now everybody in Washington is thinking that the Redskins are going to the Super Bowl or they're going to be right back in the NFC Championship game. So why do I think this is the most important game for the Giants? Because they have to show up. Now, what I mean by that, they don't have to win it, okay? If they win it, that's great. But if they show up and they play hard and they're in the game till the end, that's a good sign that the Giants are on the road to recovery. If they go in there and they get beat 36-7 or it's 21-0 in the start of the second quarter, we've got some problems, okay? So that's why I say that's a real key game. Now, after that game, they go to Dallas and they got to play the Cowboys. And then guess what happens in week 3? They come home to face the Chiefs, the AFC champions. Then in week 4, they're home against the Chargers. Chargers are a very good football team. They made the playoffs. Good quarterback, good young quarterback. Week 5, they go to New Orleans to play the Saints. Now, that's a game they should win. The Saints have no quarterback right now, okay? They drafted one, but the Saints are they don't know where they're at right now. So I think that's a good game for the Giants to win. Then they're home against the Eagles, all right, on a Thursday night. That's going to be obviously a very tough game. Then they go to Denver to face the Broncos. Broncos were in the playoffs last year. They got a good second-year quarterback and a good coach in Sean Payton. Then they play the Eagles again in Philadelphia. And then they are home against the 49ers. 49ers are struggling, but 49ers are a good team. Then they go to Chicago to play the Bears. Bears are going to be a much improved team this year with a new coach. Then they're home against the Packers, a playoff team. And then they go to Detroit to play the Lions. Lions were the number 1 seed in the NFC last year. And then they go to New England to play the Patriots. Patriots are a team they should beat, but the Patriots are a team that's up and coming with a new coach, okay? An excellent new coach. And then they have a bye week, and then they're home against the Redskins, home against the Vikings, and then they play the Raiders in Las Vegas, and then they close out the season at home against the Cowboys. So that's a tough season. That's a tough schedule. And looking at the schedule right now, I think they can beat the Redskins one time. I don't see them beating the Eagles. I think they can beat the Saints. That's 2 wins. I think they can beat the Chargers. That's 3. I think they can beat the Patriots. That's 4. Outside of that, maybe they can beat the 49ers. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to get to 6 wins. But I think if they do get to 6 or 7 wins, it's a really good season. And a lot of it's going to depend on, as I said, that first game. How do they look in that first game? How do they look in the first 3 games? I mean, if they come out of if they beat the Redskins and beat the Cowboys and lose to the Chiefs, hey, they're on their way. They're 2-1. Even if they lose to the Redskins, beat the Cowboys, lose to the Chiefs, they're 1-2. They're still looking pretty good. So I think if you can salvage 1 win from those first 3 games, you're in good shape. And then over the next 3 weeks, you can beat the Chargers and you can beat the Saints. I don't think you're going to beat the Eagles. So if you come out of that one 2-1, you're in tremendous shape. So it's all about breaking the season into quadrants, right? And see how you can do in those quadrants. But again, I'm going to say right now, if the Giants win 6 or 7 games, especially 8, it's been a really good season for this team. And a lot of it's going to be determined by how they look in the season. You remember back in 2023, the year that everybody was so hyped about what they were going to be like? They won 6 games, but they got blown out a lot, okay? And remember, some of those games they won was when Daniel Jones got hurt, and they brought in, Tommy Cutlets, right? Tommy DeVito. And he was like throwing the ball around and bringing a lot of energy to the Giants. He beat the Packers on Monday night. But they still were getting blown out a lot. And then, of course, last year, they got blown out a tremendous amount. So that's why I think if you win 6, even if you just win 6 games, but every one of those games is a dogfight, every one of those games goes down to the end, then I think you're showing improvement. And that's what we want to see from the Giants, improvement. They're not going to win the Super Bowl this year. They're not going to win a Super Bowl next year. They're probably not going to win a Super Bowl in 2027. But I think if they can show improvement and continually build this team, then I think you're going to see a team that can really fight for a championship in about 3 years. So that's my take on the Giants. Let us know what you think. You'll probably see some postings up on our YouTube page. Hopefully it's a good season. Hopefully we can watch the Giants with some excitement this year instead of not even turning the games on like I did a few times last year. And hope you enjoyed it all. For Nathan, our producer, I'm Ralph. Hope you enjoyed another edition of A New York State of Mind. Thanks a lot.